Welcome to step 4, your logo. Now, this is a very exciting step of this design process, and it's also a step that most makers find a little bit dreadful because it can be a little overwhelming to think about designing a logo if you don't have any design experience. But we are going to go through together a couple of options where you'll see you do not need any design skills to be able to design a logo for your brand that's professional, that will stand the test of time and look really good so you can be proud of it. So when it comes to designing your logo, we have three main options. The first one is to work with a graphic design professional. The second one is to use a logo generator. And the third one is to use simple typography. So before I talk about these three different options, I want to give you a few key tips when thinking about your logo. The first thing I want to say is that the logo often feels like the most important element of your brand because of iconic brands like Nike or Apple who have turned their logo into a symbol really for their brand and what it represents worldwide. And although it is of course a crucial element of your brand, it might not be quite as important as it seems. Designing your logo can be pretty stressful, and it's easy to put a lot of pressure on that small part of your brand when in reality the brand comes alive. Your brand is going to come alive mostly through your product photography, the colors and the patterns that you're going to use on your website, on your store, on your graphics on social media. And so what you really need to remember is that no customer is ever going to buy or not buy a product because they like or don't like your logo. It's important, of course, to do your best, but you don't want to be too hard on yourself either as you go through the design process for your logo. And I want to show you an example of what I mean when I say it's only a small part of the brand, and in reality, your brand comes alive in other ways. So this is a screenshot from the website frankie.com.au, which is an Australian magazine that shares makers' story and a crafty lifestyle. And I want you to pay attention at the very top of the screenshot here to the logo, which simply says Frankie. It's a simple text and it's white. There's really nothing fancy at all about this logo. The only little twist is that the last letter, the letter E, is inclined a little bit, but other than that, it's a very simple logo. There's no crazy drawing or illustration, there's no icon. It's very, very simple. And with that said, when we look at this web page, we understand the brand through all these other elements that they've used. They use a lot of patterns that you can see in the background. The colors are poppy, young, dynamic colors. We can see the fonts are more kind of handwritten, and the shape that they're using as well around their buttons or on the overlay of their images are cute and like someone drew them with their hand. And so even though the logo is really, really simple, we can understand that this is a fun, playful, creative brand without the logo doing that for us. And so that's what I mean when I say the logo is an important part of your brand, but it is not your entire brand. So I don't want you to feel like you have to say everything inside of your logo. Because actually, the more you try to say and do with your logo, the more overwhelming and crowded that logo is going to become, and the less effective and the less professional looking it will get. So it's something to keep in mind. Simple is always better when it comes to logo creation. Now, a few more tips. As I was just saying, you do not need to say or show what it is that you make. Simple is always almost better. Now, when we think about logo, when we're just getting started, usually we find ourselves wanting to add an icon or an illustration that somehow represents what it is that you make, create, and sell. So I see, for example, a lot of makers who work with yarn using a yarn ball in their logo or a threaded needle. And that is not necessary. You do not need to say or show what you make because you have to remember your logo will always be seen in some sort of context. There's always going to be a photo next to it because it's on your social media feed and there's photos there, or it will be on your website and there will be a background image with what it is that you actually sell. So there's always contextual cues as to what it is that you make, and your logo shouldn't do that job for you. Now, when we think about logos, well, important to know that free fonts and free icons will always cheapen your brand. It doesn't mean that you have to pay a lot of money to design your logo, and I'll show you how in a few minutes. But free fonts are fonts that are available publicly for everyone to use on their computer and their software, and these are fonts that we are used to seeing. So no one is walking around thinking, oh, that's a free font. No one really does that except graphic designers. But unconsciously, we recognize those fonts. And so if your logo is in Arial font or Helvetica font, we tend to recognize that as a font that we see everywhere in newspaper and magazines. And so it doesn't stand out and it doesn't say professional or high-end designer brand. And it's the same with icons. If you use icons in your logo, using free icons that we are used to seeing everywhere on websites buttons, because they're free and publicly available, will cheapen your brand as well. And finally, too busy of a logo means that it will be hard to use it in small places. Sometimes it's easy to get a little bit too much in the details of a logo, and it becomes a piece of art really, and a drawing and an illustration, where it should really be a very, very simple line work. Because when you're using it on small screen, or if you want to print it on a small sticker or label for your product or a business card, and it's going to be displayed or printed in quite a small size, it's going to become too crowded and hard to actually see what it is and what it represents. So we want to make sure that the logo is simple enough that when you look at it in its maximum 2 centimeter wide, it still is clear and easy to read, and we don't have too many details there. Now let's talk about the 3 options for designing a logo. The first one that I initially mentioned is working with a graphic design professional. I do think that this is by far the best option because you are hiring someone who is trained and experienced and skilled in the graphic design field. But the problem with that is that when you're just getting started, it's usually an expense that you can't really quite afford just yet. And so for that reason, it's not necessarily something that I would recommend you do when you're just getting started with your shop. Not only because I think you're better off keeping that money in the business to invest in growing your business instead, but also because often in the first couple of years with your shop, your vision that you have for your brand and the knowledge that you have of your market and even of yourself as an artist and designer can evolve and change slightly. And so we don't want to invest into a professionally designed logo from day one if a year and a half down the track you feel like it doesn't quite align with the new vision you have for your shop. So for that reason, I think it's better to not work with a professional when you're just getting started, because you can do a really good professional logo by yourself. And we're going to do that with the 2 next option. I'll demonstrate the 2. The first one is using a logo generator, and the second one is using simple typography. So let's talk about logo generators. Logo generators, there's 2 types. Some are free, and I'll show you one that is that has been developed by Shopify, that's called Hatchball, and others offer you to experiment and design your logo for free and play with their software for free, and they will charge you a small fee only if you decide that you like the logo and that you want to download the files. And that's the case with the Taylor brand's logo generator that I will demonstrate to you in a minute. And what I like about logo generator is that they are very easy to use. It's a very user-friendly option. And you can download all the files without having to touch a single piece of graphic design software. And that means that you have access to all your logo files in different sizes, including transparent background, which is really important. And that's very easy to get those files from those generator. And of course, you have access to customization options, so you can play with different colors, different icons, different text and fonts. So you do have a bit of flexibility in the design. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to share my screen with you and show you how to use Hatchball first and Taylor Brands second. Now, the first tool that we're going to look at together is called Hatchball, and it is offered for free by Shopify. When you get to the Hatchball homepage, all you have to do is click on the Get Started button, and then it will ask you a couple of questions to give you some logos options to choose from that you can then customize. So here I'm keeping with the example of my leather handbag brand. So I'm going to select fashion, and then it will ask me to pick up to 3 visual styles. So based on what the brand that you have is, you want to go ahead and select a few adjectives that really represent and describe what your brand is all about. In my case, let's go with modern yet classic and elegant. I think that defines the brand that I'm working with in my example quite well. So I'm going to click on next. And this is the business name that I'm playing with here in my example. The leather bag brand that I'm creating with you is called Hola Mia. I don't have a slogan, and I'll talk to you about slogan in a little while. So for now, I'm just going to leave that empty and click on next. And then here you want to select all the different options where you will use your logo. So I don't plan on using it in a physical store or large surfaces. This would be, for example, for billboards. So I'm just going to click online store, social media, print, and business cards, which covers everything I need to do with it. Click on next, and then here they have made a few logos for me that I can choose, and then I'll have the option to customize them a little bit. So remember what we've said in terms of the tips that I gave you for the logo. So we don't want something that's too crowded. We don't need the logo to necessarily say what we are doing or what we are making and selling. So for example, this logo here and this one here, so this light yellow background and this orange one, I think they actually look quite good, but the only thing that I don't like with it is this little handbag icon, because we don't need to say that we sell handbag, and this cheapened the logo and the look of the brand in general. So if we didn't have that and we simply had a square around, I think it would look really elegant, really sophisticated, and it's a logo that we can keep for decades without needing to change it, because this will really age well. And similarly here with the handbag here, if we didn't have that and we just had Hola Mia with the little strip here, this would be a really fine logo to me. But simply because of that rule of not having to say and to show what you make, I'm not going to pick any of those. So scrolling down, you can have a look. Some of them you might like, others you might think are not really relevant to what you want your brand to be and the aesthetics that you're going for. And we also want to remember to pick something that's not too crowded. So for example, this one, it looks quite nice and original. It has that modern vibe that I'm looking for, but I'm worried that if it was any smaller than that, because that's quite a big display here, if it was only 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, it would be really hard to read Hola Mia, and some of those line details here will get lost because it would be too small. So keeping that in mind, I'm just scrolling through a few more options here. Some, for example, see this one is not really working because we have no reason to have that bird in there for our brand. Same with the sport shirt here. This one I quite like. This is simple, sophisticated, something that would work well as well. You have to think about, what are you going to do with your logo as well? Is it going to be on a product label, for example? Could it be stamped, for example, in my leather bags as the mark of the brand? If that's the case, this could be quite nice to use as a stamp. So these are the things that you want to keep in mind as you look at your options here. And I quite like those really simple logos like this as well. So I'm going to pick, just for our example, this one, so we can see what the customization options are. So once you select a main logo, you can still change it a little bit. You can still add a slogan at any time here if you want. And then you can also go into your fonts here and change the font. So for example, if you really like the style of the logo, but you're not so sure about the look of those letters here, you can say, well, I like this one better, or I like this one better, and keep scrolling until you find something that you are happier with. In this case, I actually quite liked what they had for us. I think that this, for example, is a little bit more fun and playful, and so it could work for some brand, but for the one that I'm looking for, but for the one that I'm designing for, which is really elegant and sophisticated, I think that we need something very simple, but that is bold enough and that has a bit of character. So the one that we had, which was a bold, well, actually, I can't remember now which one it was, but essentially something like this. That's really straight, those really straight lines, classic font would do quite well, I think, for the kind of brand that I'm designing for. This one is a bit broader, a bit wider, and I quite like that as well. So I'm going to say I'm happy with this. And the next option that you need to go and customize are the colors. Now, keep in mind that this is a free logo generator. And so it's really great because if you work with no budget, it's a fantastic way to design a logo and to get all your files really easily. But you will lack some customization option when it comes to colors here. They will offer you some options here which are really color palettes. So if you, for example, want something elegant, you could click on this and they will offer you some purples and yellow and blue. And so this could work with what I have in the color palette that I have designed. It's close enough to the blue that I have in my palette, but you don't have an option to actually pick the exact color that you have in your color palette, which I think is quite important. And the reason I would prefer, if you can, that you use something like Tailor Brand, which we'll look at together in a second, rather than Hatchball, simply because you have more customization option. But for now, I'm happy enough with this, so I'm gonna go with this logo. And when I'm ready and I'm thinking, okay, this is great, I click on next. And here it will simply say to me, download your free logos, and it will send you a package with all these different logos already sized for you, which is really fantastic. And all you have to do is click download logo and input your email and a password. It's completely free. And as soon as you do that, they will send you an email with your logo files attached. So it's really fantastic that this is a free service. And if you don't have a budget at all to create your logo, I really would recommend that you at least take a look at what they offer you. Now, if you have a little bit of a budget, and not much, it's really not that expensive, you can look at Tailor Brands, tailorbrands.com, and we've got the Spanish version here. And so quite simply, it works really similarly, but you will see we have more options. So it's another logo generator. So I'm going to type in here Hola Mia, which is the name of the business we're working with at the moment, diseñar. And then here, again, it asks me a few questions to understand the type of business that I have so that they can offer logos to us that are likely to be a good fit for what we do. So I'm going to say that I sell products and mostly online. Now, in this next step, they're going to ask me what industry I work with or what kind of business I have. They don't have all the words in the dictionary available at the moment, so it's okay if you start typing words and they don't recognize it. Don't worry, they will still be able to create logos for you. But if you can, try and add a few keywords that help them understand what it is that you do. So for example, let me switch to English really quickly so I can type words in English in here. If I was selling handmade jewelry, I would start typing handmade and they will come up with handmade jewelry, which I can then select. So you can, for example, I could try bag shop would be or bags would be a good keywords for me because that's essentially what I'm doing. And when you find something that you think is relevant and works for your shop and your industry, you can click on next. You can skip this step though if you want to. And here it's going to ask me what kind of logo I want. Now I can decide that I want a logo based around an icon. I can decide that I want a logo that's typographic only, so just the fonts. Or I can decide to have a logo where they will use the initials as the main element for the logo design. So I'm going to pick name-based here because I quite like the idea of staying away from icons when you don't work with a professional graphic designer, because we don't want to, as I was saying, show or explain what we're making as products with the logo. It's not necessary, and I fear that with logo generator, if you say that you sell bags, they will essentially try to find a bag icon to go with your logo, which I don't think is necessarily the best option. So I will pick name-based here, but feel free to explore those other options as well. And then when you click on name-based, they will ask you 3 styles of font that you like. So here you want to keep in mind the values of your brand, your ideal customer, and the style of your brand. So in my case, I'm going to go with bolder, classy, and elegant. And click on next. When they're done, they will ask you to sign up for free so that you can start playing with the software and see your logo options. So you'll want to fill in your email address and create a password to create an account here. So I'm going to do this myself now. And once you filled in your password and email, you have access to this page where they show you the different logos that I've created for you on the left here. So you can scroll down to see more options if the first one you don't quite like, and see what they came up with for you. So for example, this one I quite like. It's really simple. It has a very elegant look and it's kind of feminine as well, which is great because my ideal customer in my example is a woman. And if you're not happy, you can still click on see more and they will generate more logos for you. And simply scrolling down to see what they have. This one here works quite well as well. Actually, I like this one a lot. Very sophisticated. So I might pick this one, and once you decide the logo that you like, the look that you like, so I hesitated between this one and this one, but I'm going to keep this one, which I quite like, and click on customize. Now once you click on customize, you can, if you really want to, change the font, but my bet is that if you pick this logo to start with, is because you like the font. So in my case here, I'm going to stick with this one. And then here in color, I can pick the color that I want. Now here are some suggested color palettes that I can pick from. Or if I click on main here, I can actually have my custom color, which is a great advantage compared to the Hatchball tool that was free, but that didn't let us select the actual color that you wanted. Now, if you remember when we created your color palette, I told you to write down your hex code, which is those 6 numbers preceded by a hashtag that represent a specific color and that any software on this planet will understand. So you want to go back to that and pick the color and the hex code that you want to use for your logo and type it in here. A64E77, and that's my dusty pink that I had selected in the previous step, and I can click on save. And as you can see, it will create the logo in my actual color. And with that, I'm quite happy with how the logo looks for now. And so I'm going to click finish at the very top here. They're going to ask me that I am sure that I am finished with my design and to review it, but I'm really quite happy with it. So I can click I'm finished. And then here they will offer me a few different things. Now remember, Tailor Brands is not like Hatchball, it is a paid service. So once you are finished designing your logo, you have to click on download here. So to get your logo, you simply need to click on download and it will give you a file with all your logo versions. So it's a bundle of files in different format resolutions. Some of them will have colored backgrounds, others will have transparent backgrounds. So you'll have a file that you can save to your computer where you have the logos and different sizing that you can use on many different platforms that's already prepared for you, which is really fabulous. And so the only thing is that you need to upgrade to be able to do so because it is a paid service. So you click on the upgrade button and they will offer you a few different plans. They have a basic, a standard, and a premium plan. Now, of course, I will let you have a look for yourself as what you think could be the most interesting for you. And keep in mind that Tailor Brands does a lot more than just a logo generator. They also have graphic design tools, they have website builders, they do free domain if you ever want to build your own website. But I would recommend that you don't let yourself get too worried about that because we're here to design your logo, and so we don't need all of these features. So I would really recommend you stick to the basic plan where you still get your high quality logo files. You can choose that, and once you upgrade to this basic plan, you will be able to download and save your files. The last thing I want to point out here is that this is a monthly recurring payment, which means that you will be charged $6.99 or $13.99 or $34.99 every month unless you cancel, which you can absolutely do. And so you can decide to upgrade to download your files and then to cancel immediately, and you will not be charged again, and you will keep the rights to the logo files that you've downloaded when you paid for that first month. So if you want to make sure you can go in the FAQs below and they will explain here that you retain or use rights for your design even after your subscription has ended. So if you want to have a look at what happens when you cancel a subscription and how the subscription works, you can do so here, but it is a very affordable option to get all your logo files ready for you and not to have to do it yourself and open any kind of design software.